Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 4. Hiranyakashipu terrorizes the universe. Text number 9, we'll just read. Yatra vidruma sopana mahama marakata bhuva yatra spatika kudyanti yani vaidurya stamba panktataya yatra vidruma sopana mahamarakata bhuva yatra spatika kudyani vidurya stamba panktaya. Mahamakata bhuvana yatra spatika kudyani vidurya stamba panktaya yatra vidruma sopana mahamarakata bhuva yatra spatika kudyani vidurya stamba panktaya. Jenske. Yatra vidruma sopana mahamarakata bhuvanaha yatra spatika kudyani vaidurya stamba panktaya. Yatra, where? The residential quarters of King Indra. Vidruma sopana, steps made out of coral. Mahamarakata, emerald. Bhuvanaha, floors. Yatra, where? Spatika, crystal. Kudyani, walls. Vaidurya, of the Vaidurya stone. Stamba, of pillars. Panktaya, lines. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The steps of King Indra's residence were made of coral. The floor was bedecked with invaluable emeralds. The walls were of crystal, and the columns of Vaidurya stone. The wonderful canopies were beautifully decorated. The seats were bedecked with rubies. The silk bedding, as white as foam, was decorated with pearls. The ladies of the palace were blessed with beautiful teeth, and the most wonderful, beautiful faces walked here and there in the palace, their ankle bells tingling melodiously, and saw their own beautiful reflections in the gems. The demigods, however, being very much oppressed, had to bow down and offer obeisances at the feet of Hiranyakashipu, who chastised the demigods very severely and for no reason. Thus Hiranyakashipu lived in the palace and severely ruled everyone. Purport. Hiranyakashipu was so powerful in the heavenly planets that all the demigods except Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu were forced to engage in his service. Indeed, they were afraid of being severely punished if they disobeyed him. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti has compared Hiranyakashipu to Maharaj Vena, who was also atheistic and scornful of the ritualistic ceremonies mentioned in the Vedas. Yamarajvena was afraid of some of the great sages, such as Bhrigu, whereas Hiranyakashipu ruled in such a way that everyone feared him but Lord Vishnu, Lord Brahma, and Lord Shiva. Hiranyakashipu was so alert against being burned to ashes by the anger of great sages like Bhrigu that by dint of austerity he surpassed their power and placed even them under his subordination. It appears that even in the higher planetary systems to which the people are promoted by pious activities, disturbances are created by asuras like Hiranyakashipu. No one in the material world can live in peace and prosperity without disturbance. Translation. The steps of King Indra's residence were made out of coral. The floor was bedecked with invaluable emeralds. The walls were crystal. The columns of Vidura stone. The wonderful canopies were beautifully decorated. The seats were bedecked with rubies, and the silk bedding, as white as foam, was decorated with pearls. The ladies of the palace, who were blessed with beautiful teeth and the most wonderful, beautiful faces, walked here and there in the palace, their ankle bells tingling melodiously, and saw their own beautiful reflections in the gems. The demigods, however, being very much oppressed, had to bow down and offer obeisances at the feet of Hiranyakashipu, who chastised the demigods very severely and for no reason. Thus Hiranyakashipu lived in the palace and severely ruled everyone. I think we have a spy in here. Namo Vishnu Vidaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskajades. In the Vedic culture, there are 4 Purusharthas. One of them is Dharma, then Artha, then Kama, and Moksha. And the purpose, the goal of the last one is Moksha. Now, without Dharma, Kama, Artha, and Kama are considered to be those of the Asuras. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Trividam narakasyedam dwaram nashidam atmanaha kama krodha tatal. Actually, let's start back. My 2 other favorite verses in the 16th chapter. Tanaham dvishita kuran samsareshu naradamam shipram yajastram ashubam asrishveva yonishu. Those who are envious and mischievous and who are the lowest among mankind, I perpetually cast down into the lower species of life. So that's called asura. In the modern dictionary, in the modern terminology, we say they're demons. Now, if you call someone asura in modern day culture, people will not mind. If you call them a demon, they become offended. So better to call them asuras. Be polite. Asura Varya, my dear Asura, you're Asura Varya. You're the best of the asuras, or the biggest asura. Jai. But you'll be cast into the divine species of life, because that's who you are. Asram yona apanam mura janmani mama prapyaiva kondya tito yadamam gatim. Obtaining such lower species of life, they go down and down and down, and until they reach the most abominable species of existence. And then Krishna says, they can never obtain me. Now, what is this? It sounds quite cruel. What is their disqualification? So Krishna says, Trividam narakasyedam, Trividam narakasyedam, dwaram nashidam atmanaha. So what is the dwaram? What is the gate that leads us into this lower species of life? After all, even if we're sent to hell and tortured by the Yamadutas, that's not the end game. Just leave people in hell and torture them. The end game is to put them into some species of life which is suitable for their mentality. The tortures and everything else are there, but the main purpose of hell is to train people up to take a lower species of life. After all, if we were served a plate of stool, anyone, unless they're extremely hungry, would not consider eating it. It would be repulsive. But when you're trained in hell to become a pig, then when you see a plate of stool, and if there's no plate, you become overwhelmed with happiness. This is like our glubdiman or samosas, tasty, all kinds of variety of tastes, and very nutritious also. Pigs are very fatty and strong because they eat stool. So one has to be trained, and that training is done in hell but for the asuras. And what is their reason that they're put into this dwaram? What is the gate? To become qualified to become a hog or a pig or a dog in one's next lifetime, or a germ. People are now thinking day and night about the coronavirus. So if they die thinking about the coronavirus, guess what kind of life they get? What is it? Kama, krodha, tata, lobhas. Lust, anger, and greed. No, people are anxious to become lusty. If they're not lusty, they feel depressed. And if they're greedy, and they can fulfill their greed, they're considered to be national heroes. They're the acharyas. They govern the whole universe. And anything that gets in the way, any obstacle to fulfill their greed, becomes the source of anger. And Krishna summarizes that. Idam adyamaya labdva, imam prapse manoritam. Idamastiyam apime bhavishiti parardhanam asomaya hatak shatra hanishe chapalan api ishvaraham ham bhogi saraham balavan sukhi. So much is mine. In other words, Krishna not only tells us lust, anger, and greed, but he gives us some vivid understanding of how this plays out in material existence, in material consciousness. So much is mine, and I'll increase more in the future. So much money do I have, and I'll get more and more. Here's my enemy, and I've killed him. My other enemy will also be killed. I'm the Lord of everything. I am perfect. I am powerful. I am happy. I'm surrounded by rich and aristocratic relatives. I shall perform some charity. I shall perform some sacrifice. I will go, as Purnachandra Maharaj said in his Itamrita, I will go to the heavenly planets and kiss the apsaras there. In this way, the demoniac are deluded by ignorance. So this is the manifestation of lust, anger, greed, and is that the first word? No. First word there. Etanyapi, Tudrusi. Eter vimukta kontiya tamo dvaras privirnara atra itma shayas tatoyati param gatim. Etera vimukta konteya. If we want the path of liberation from this lust, anger, and greed. Now, of course, we may think, well, other people are lusty, other people are angry and greedy, but I'm a devotee. As soon as I threw the grains in the fire sacrifice, all the lust, all my anger and greed went into the fire. And from the fire it entered into the heart of my spiritual master, and we wish him good luck. Hopefully he's as pure as everyone tells us he is. Or else, as I said many times, here's a little dakshin to pay for the hospital bill. So this is our idea. We throw the grains in the fire, the lust, the anger, the greed. They get burnt up in the fire. We're pure devotees. And now all my lust, anger, and greed is all spiritual. I'm convinced that I'm pure. The only problem in the Hare Krishna movement is that other people so far are not convinced that I'm pure. But with a little education, a little shastric study, a little purification on their part, they'll realize that actually I'm pure. So, if we actually become liberated, then we become free from these gates of hell, and we should perform acts which are conducive to self-realization. And what are those acts? Yakshastra vidim utsrija vartate kamakarata sasadim avatnoti nasukam na param gatim. That yakshastra, so Shastra has a bad reputation nowadays. They always have some fanatic person holding up a book and saying, I am the truth. I mean, the book's the truth, or whatever. I'm the way. No one comes to God except through me, or whatever. So people think this is fanaticism. That, oh yeah, you believe in this book. Well, they also believe in books. They believe in comic books nowadays. What to speak of regular books. People go and they spend billions of dollars on something like Avatar, watching Avatar, and then they create, oh, you're reading these books, why are you wasting your time? What are they doing? Just living in an actual fantasy world. And here we're giving some books of knowledge. Well, tell us what's wrong with the book of knowledge. Tell us what's wrong with the fact the soul is transmigrating and that the universe has a God in control. Tell us what's wrong. What is your logic and argument? You're telling us we're escaping. Well, yeah, we're escaping from people like you. It's good reason why we're trying to escape from the material world, because it's dukkhalayam shastratam. It's full of misery and it's temporary. And because you're in ignorance, you want to stay here. So good luck. So Shastra vidam usrija, because what will Shastra do? It'll take away, it'll tell us how to work in such a way as to become free from lust, anger, and greed. And is it very complicated? Become free from lust, anger, and greed? No, just give up the mentality that we're the lords of material energy. Just give up our attachment to becoming God, and then when lust will go away. And if you're not lusty, then there's no question of becoming greedy. If you just yadricha lavashantu stro tvanvati to vimatsaraha samaksirava siddhacha kridvapina nabhajite. One who's satisfied with gains which comes of its own accord. Not that we stop doing everything. We do things, but whatever comes, we accept, that's all. And we make the best use of it for Krishna's service. Whether we get a lot or a little. As Hiranyakashipu here, he got a whole lot. Who can imagine? Who's going to sleep on bed tonight as white as foam? Surrounded by pearls, and when are we going to have a temple room made out of with walls of Vidura, stone? What was the floor made out of? Emerald. So when are we going to do that? We have floors made out of wood. Our beds probably creak when we go to sleep at night. So what is our material opulence? It's very little, if anything. But actually one will not become happy by material opulence. One will become happy by the consciousness in which one utilizes whatever one gets. So Hiranyakashipu had all the opulence in the universe, and he was miserable. And we can have no opulence at all and be completely happy. As a matter of fact, at the end of life, after the kings or the emperors were older, then they give up voluntarily all their wealth and they go into the forest. So we can't do that. But we can try to renounce the mentality that everything belongs to me and it's meant for my service. Instead, everything belongs to Krishna and it's meant to please Krishna. Then we can make some progress towards happiness. If we want to be happy, after all, Hiranyakashipu, why did he want to avoid death? Because he wanted to be happy. He was in anxiety. I might die, like his brother. I guess it was his baby brother. His little baby brother, Hiranyaksha, died. And he was afraid of death also. So to be happy, he wanted to avoid death. So he went to an extreme measure to do it. But he was never happy. Even with avoiding death, he still wasn't satisfied. In Brahman, one still will not be satisfied, even though one has actually avoided taking birth again, at least temporarily. Matter of fact, Brahman is the only place you can exist, besides Vaikuntha and Goloka, where you don't have to take birth again. But then you want to take birth after some time. So he is miserable because he didn't have the proper consciousness. Why? Because he was still lusty, angry, and greedy. Like it says, even you merge in Brahman, you won't be happy. Yanyayar vindaksha vimuktamaninas twadasta bhavara vashuddha buddhaya. Because one's intelligence is still impure. And what is that impure intelligence? One is thinking, I am God, I am the controller, I'm the enjoyer, he is my enemy, I've killed him. It's all due to ignorance. Ignorance covers our real intelligence. Lust is never sought, and it's the thing that's lost. After one starts the process of lust, comes greed, anger, delusion, loss of memory, and then loss of intelligence. So Hiranyakashipu never really got his proper intelligence, and therefore he was miserable. Nasti buddhya yuktasya, nacha yuktasya bhavanaha, napa chabhavintakshantira, ashantasya kutaksukam. One who's not in Krishna consciousness, I always get this wrong because I never remember the new translation. One who's not in, I guess it says Krishna consciousness. One who's not in Krishna consciousness can have neither a controlled mind nor steady intelligence. Well, here, and I don't try. One who's not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a controlled mind, without which there's no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? So if one is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness, if our mind's not controlled, we can have neither a controlled mind nor a steady intelligence. So if every moment we're seeing things differently, we'll always be fearful. There's nothing steady. There's nothing stable. Without stability, then we can't be peaceful. If suddenly this whole room starts to rock back and forth, there was an earthquake, and we try to meditate, we'll try it, see if you can do it. In many places in the world where they have earthquakes, and see if you can sit there and peacefully meditate as the building collapses around you. That would be a big test of one's steadiness of mind. The whole world is changing, and we don't see it in relationship to Krishna, or at least Brahman, then we won't have clear intelligence. And we won't have a steady mind. And therefore we can't be peaceful. We can't control our mind with our intelligence and see things properly. What are we going to think about? How are we going to see things? Our intelligence directs us how we perceive things, how we experience things. And if the intelligence is not clear, then consciousness is not clear. And if consciousness is not clear, then the mind's unclear. And therefore we'll always be anxious what the future is, because we won't know. Therefore, yakshastra vidim utsrija, one who's not following scripture can have neither peace nor happiness nor the supreme destination. Therefore, tasmat shastram pramanam te karya yastito gyatva shastram vidanokta karma kartumi harase. One should know what is to be done, what is not to be done by the direction of Shastra. And knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that one gradually becomes purified. So what a Shastra? Is it just a bunch of rules and regulations and stories? No, it's meant to show us, give up this desire to control the material energy, this lust to do it. It's not that we stop utilizing material energy and controlling it for Krishna, but give it up for our sense gratification. Stop feeding lust, anger, and greed, and then gradually it'll go away. That's what Shastra is all about. And then the result is that one will understand, in truth, the value of becoming conscious of Krishna, and one can make progress towards going back to actually becoming steady on the spiritual platform. But as long as we're not convinced, as long as we're not conscious of Shastra in our conditioned life, what's to be done and what's not to be done, then the result is that we'll do things that we're not supposed to be doing. As soon as we give up Shastra, then immediately we'll do things on the basis of whim. It may seem perfectly reasonable, and our minds will justify whatever we're doing, and we'll feel energized by lust and anger and greed. We'll feel enlivened by it, but it'll simply cause problems for ourselves and others, because it'll cause us to forget Krishna, which is our real problem. And if we do everything on the basis of what Krishna wants, with the idea that everything should be utilizing Krishna's service, and we find out what Krishna actually wants, we do it to please him, and we become Krishna conscious, then there's no more problems. Then we're actually back in our natural experience of eternally blissful, loving service to Krishna. And then everything will actually be beneficial for ourselves and others. Otherwise, we'll be wasting our time, we'll be wasting everyone else's time. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
So this natural development of four Purusharthas, I just can't see how Dharma is the first. I would put it on third or even fourth place.
Well, that's our problem.
I mean, how could you explain how it develops from one to the other?
Dharma? Dharma means what? You know, Dharma is a scripture. It's how knowing how the material nature works. Like first stage is brahmachari life. Svadhyaya, study. Just like we're studying, we're trying to find out how the material nature works, so we know how we were, as Krishna says in the 15th chapter, which I just forgot the first word again. 15, the last verse of the 15th chapter. Actually, the 13th chapter. The 15th chapter, I remember. 13th chapter. Kshetra kshetraya jnanam antara jnana chakshusha bhuta prakriti moksham cha te vidu yanti te puram. One should know kshetra jnana. One should know the difference between the body and the knower of the body, the knowers of the body. Kshetra jnanam antara jnana chakshusha. One should see through the eyes of knowledge the difference between the knowers of the body and the body itself. One who knows these things, by study, he attains to the supreme destination. So that's why we're studying. So we can see who we are, who Krishna is, how the material nature works. So knowing these things, we can act properly, and then we'll come to the next stage. What is that? We'll get what we need for the body, artha. We'll get the necessity, but based upon dharma. We won't kill the animals, or if we're a Vaishya, we'll protect them. We won't exploit the citizens. If we're a Kshatriya, we'll protect them. We won't give out false knowledge if we're a Brahmin, but we'll give out reality that we're not God, Krishna is God. So that's called artha. That's how you make your living. And then we'll get what we need, kama, to live. Kama, what is that verse? Jivasya jivanam. That nindriya pritira, lobha, tir, lobha, yavataha, karmasya, nartasya cha, what is it? Karma labhaya smritaha. that life is never meant for simply satisfying the senses. One should desire only a healthy life, because self-realization is more or less the aim of life. One should desire a healthy life. So we need to eat properly, we need to sleep properly, we need certain resources, but as Prabhupada said, for salt. Just like if you want to eat something, you put a little salt on it to taste, so it tastes good. It brings out the flavor, the natural flavor. If you put too little, then you can't taste the flavor of the food. And if you put too much, you won't taste it either, because you only taste the salt. So salt to taste. So we have to know, according to our psychophysical nature, what is the amount of economic development we need in order to actually gradually become detached from material existence and attached to the spiritual existence and achieve moksha. Does that explain the order better? How do you see it differently?
Yeah. So then contemporary society is not following any of it, or?
Oh no, it is following. Not really, but contemporary society is completely absorbed in so-called economic development for so-called sense gratification. But because they're not following Dharma, they don't know really what proper economic development is, or proper sense gratification is.
Oh, so then if you skip one of the previous steps, then you don't know how to do the next.
If you skip Dharma, then you're finished. If you have a foundation, if the foundation of the building is weak, the whole building will collapse after some time. So without Dharma, everything gets destroyed. Tanasjanudinam Dharma, Sattvam Socham Dayashama, Balena Kaliya Rajan, Nakshantya Yor Balam Smriti. Day after day, as Dharma goes down, then everything else is destroyed, including Tatasjanudinam Dharma, Sattvam, truthfulness, Socham, cleanliness, mercy, forgiveness, bodily strength, memory, all good qualities are destroyed. You don't have Dharma, you don't have anything. All you have left is unlimited so-called economic development, which is not really they're not really developing economically, it's just a myth. And therefore, for so-called sense gratification, their senses are never satisfied. There's no such thing as sense gratification. It can't be satisfied because Chintyam aparayam cha pralayantam upashitya kama paboga paramam etavam iti nischita asha bahasya sutarabhada kama krota parayana ihanti kama bogarta ainartha sanjaya. They believe that to gratify their senses unto the end of life is the prime necessity of human civilization, and therefore there is no measurement for their anxiety. Being bound by hundreds and thousands of desires, by lust and anger, they secure money by illegal means for sense gratification. So the so-called only economic development for sense gratification doesn't give you either one of them. It gives you a lot of problems. The next lifetime you'll have to suffer for it. Is that clear? Anything else? Yes.
Hare Krishna. In chapter 16, Krishna says that demons think Siddham Balavan Sukhi, that I am perfect and happy. On the other hand, we also know that this is one of the niyamas of yoga to be satisfied, and it looks somewhat similar to thinking I am happy. Yeah. What is the difference between being satisfied and the demoniac idea I am happy?
Yes. So, first of all, the demoniac, as it says, Ishvaraham aham bogi, Siddhaham balavan sukhi. First of all, they're not balavan, they're not sukha, they're none of these things. They're just on the mental platform. Manorate nasati davitovahi, thinking that they're happy. But if you pick up a key, you have to have both sides of the key. So now they're happy, soon they'll be miserable. So there is the kind of material happiness, what's considered happiness in material. But as soon as you accept this material happiness, you also have to accept the misery. I'm happy now because I think I've gained so much, but inevitably I have to lose it. And I'm going to be even more unhappy when I lose it. I strive so hard, I suffered so much to get this thing. And now I'm happy that I have it, that I think I have it, but soon I'm going to lose it. And I'm going to become even more unhappy when I lose it because I work so hard for it. I think I work so hard for it. So yes, there's a kind of happiness, but it doesn't last very long. And on the other hand, nanya deho deha bhajam reloke kastang karman arate vidbhujanye tapo divyam satigam putaka tapo divyam putraka, what is that? Brahmasokyam tvanantyam. That yes, the dogs and hogs are eating stool and they're very happy. We got our food, we're being strong, we're empowered for sex life. They're very happy. But tapo divyam putraka yena sadvam shudyat tasmat brahma sokyam tvanantam. For real happiness is eternal and goes on forever. That's real happiness. Not this false sukham, which leads to dukkam. Yehi samsparshya bhoga dukkha yone evate adyantavante kontya nate shuramate buddha. An intelligent person is not attracted by the sources of misery, which due to contact with the senses, with their objects. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man doesn't delight in them. Anything that's temporary, just like you're eating ice cream, you're enjoying it, but sometimes you're in anxiety, it's going away. And you even get another ice cream cone. You'll still be in anxiety, it's disappearing. Until you eat so much ice cream, you get sick and you lament, why did I eat so much ice cream? Anything else? Yes.
You were mentioning in this discussion economic development, and many times, as you've said on one of the previous lectures, that in itself it's not a problem and technology is not a problem, but we should utilize it for Krishna. My question is, without, no other system, but this blindfolded system of crazy capitalism is able to develop technology to such an extent, because otherwise there is no impetus for people to develop such technology. So we wouldn't have it with Dharma on one hand, and on the other probably we would rely on more subtle Vedic technology, which is lost due to...
Well, I think you don't really understand how things work. You think the demigods are engaged in technological advancement?
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. We have subtle technology which is lost due to...
Which is a lot more powerful. And we didn't have all this technology, we'd have to have clean food, we'd have to have pure food, fresh air, clean water. It would be a great disaster. We couldn't call up our phones and tell them, about the war that's going on around the corner. So much loss. We couldn't have so much pornography and animal killing and all these other things. And now they're going to kill, they're trying to kill people on this, everyone. Eugenicists want to kill everyone, and they're using technology to do it. What a loss if we didn't have this opportunity to kill everyone.
So we would have better technology, even more...
What is it? What do we want? Do we want clean air, fresh water, pure food, nice relationships with people, spiritual advance? What do we want? What are we trying to achieve? Rather than spying on everyone, putting everyone in anxiety, controlling their every movement, making sure they become an animal in the next lifetime.
I agree with everything. Only there appear... it might, somebody might object, what about health? Modern technology can do so much, with these invasive methods. What about this? Technology could help us. According to this verse which you were citing from Bhagavatam, we should desire health. What about health?
Health? Do you think modern technology is health?
In extreme cases, when things go too far.
Yeah, if you get run over by a truck, you probably want to, nowadays you probably want to, but previously there weren't any trucks. You didn't have to get worried about running over a truck. And previously in Ayurveda, they had advanced medicine, they had advanced surgery. We have the Charak Samhita and the Shushusha Samhita. In Shushusha Samhita, there's advanced surgery also. But people didn't necessarily, that was generally meant for that type of medicine was meant for the warriors on the battlefield, because people generally didn't run into as many problems we run into. 50,000 deaths on the motorways of America every year. Didn't have such extreme. On the other hand, their modern so-called health has made people unhealthy, because it's all propaganda. They may temporarily, cover over your symptoms, but by covering over your symptoms, they actually degrade your health. Sickness is actually meant for purification, for the most part. And if you're not being purified, then you're just getting sicker. So covering over the symptoms is making people sicker, not healthier. Fever is meant to heat up the body, so the toxins are eliminated through sweat. You stop the elimination of toxins, then you're simply allowing yourself to die. Suicide, generally taking these type of medicines. Of course, in extreme, if there's too many toxins and things are going haywire, then you may need some intervention in order to, some penicillin or something. But they overuse it. You sneeze and they give you a round of penicillin, so everyone's immune to the penicillin. The germs are immune to penicillin. They've overused it, that's all. It has its place. But they've misused it for economic exploitation. Everything has its place if it's used intelligently, not for greed, lust, anger, and greed. Anything else? Okay. Thank you. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande.